and welcome back to the second part of the dojo series. This is the diorama part. Let's just get into it. I figured since I'm making a diorama, why not display it nicely, right? So I made this wooden frame and I chamfered the edges a little bit to make it, stylish. And of course it's made from pine, which is not a very luxurious wood. So I dyed it into a darker walnut color to make it look a little bit nicer. And that was the completed frame. So I used this piece of styrofoam as the base. You can see it's very wide because we will film this in CinemaScope format, so it will look good on camera. That was my logic behind it anyway. So I figured the dojo should be in the middle. It will be a symmetrical shot. And then, on the left and on the right, I'm gonna put some hills and stuff like that. And in front of the dojo, I'm gonna put some stairs. And also I want the whole front side of the diorama to slope forwards, right, towards me. And it's gonna be much lower than the back side. The only way I could shape the styrofoam was with a very sharp knife. And of course it makes a lot of mess, all these tiny styrofoam bubbles. I was just trying out different stuff for the hills. Perhaps I can make this sort of a channel or a riverbed or something, and I can put a tiny bridge over it maybe. Yeah, that's also a good idea. Here I'm digging the hole for the stairs that are gonna come here eventually. And this is an approximate idea for the layout. And this is all the mess on the floor. So after a little bit of cleaning, I had to reinforce it all. I just used barbecue sticks, and a little bit of wood glue, but honestly I trust barbecue sticks much more than the glue. And then I wanted to harden the surface of the styrofoam, and if you lightly go over it with a torch, it will first melt, but then harden. And that way you can shape the terrain even more and make it more organic. And now it was time to make a stone wall for the base of the dojo, and I used my new Proxxon hot wire cutter. I just cut a lot of these tiny bricks and I put them into a jar with the real rocks, and I just shook them a little bit, and you can see on the left is a freshly cut stone, and on the right is the one that was shaken down a little bit. Yeah, it looks much better. And for the glue, I just figured it's probably the best to use plaster, just ordinary plaster, and it will harden very fast and it will stick very well to the styrofoam. So it was just cheap and easy way to glue stuff. And yeah, it's just about laying these stone bricks on top of each other. As you can see, the whole wall is leaned backwards a little bit. All these temples from Incas and Mayas are built, they look like that. So and even though it doesn't have anything to do with Japan, I just thought it's gonna be a good look. And then it was time to plaster the whole surface of the terrain to also make it harder and to make a good even ground layer. Again, I used plaster. I also put some glue for bathroom tiles just to make it more stronger. Some sawdust for the texture, and some wood glue to connect everything better, and of course water. So it's like a sticky gooey mixture, and I plastered the whole styrofoam surface with it. I used a painting knife to spray it around, but you can also of course use a spoon, your fingers, a brush, a shoe, a cat, a chameleon, or an oboe. Another element that I wanted to have on my diorama are the stones, or the rocks. One easy way to make them is just to use aluminum foil from the kitchen and just put plaster inside it. And once they harden and you take them out of the foil, they look really nicely. It's not the most realistic rock, but it was good enough for me. It's not bad. Then I had to make a little bit of space for my newly formed rocks. And again I glued them with more plaster, because plaster sticks to plaster pretty well. And here's the whole layout, and it looks interesting, I guess. The right side is a bit more higher than the left. It's nicely asymmetrical, and here are the rocks embedded into the ground. Very nice. Okay, so I'm making stairs. I just cut a couple of these sheets and glued them together to form the stairs. And on the left and the right side of the stairs, I wanted some kind of a carved rock. This way the stairs would be like bookended. Bookended? Is that a term? I don't know. But it makes them look more interesting and actually a bit more oriental as well. Of course, we gotta make them look like stone, and they wouldn't be built from very wide slabs of rock. They would be probably made from smaller pieces, so I'm just cutting in these indentations and to make them look more realistic. So these two stairs are for the left and the right side of the dojo, and now I gotta build the main stairway for the front of the dojo. So it's just a matter of gluing one step on top of each other 347 times, approximately. Again, I just plastered it into place. And again, I just cut these oriental rock designs for the left and the right side of the stairs. And somehow it's very nice to work with the plaster. You can fill all these tiny gaps with it, you can smooth it with water, and if you brush it, it leaves a very nice organic texture. It's very cool. Again, we have to put some detail on the front stairs as well. You know, just cutting all these tiny slots that form the stone slabs, and I put some texture on it with the actual rock. When I was pushing pretty hard, I wasn't really gentle. You know what? I was looking at this footage that I was recording, and somehow it looked too yellow. And after many years of using my Canon DSLR, I remembered it had an automatic white balance option. Bam! Look at this! Huh? It looks much better now. The colors are much more similar to what it looks like in the real life, and it's just amazing. And from now on, the video is gonna look much better. And I call myself a filmmaker, and I'm actually making a tutorial right now to show you how to make stuff. And it didn't occur to me to, you know, just check the white balance option. I guess in the age of the internet, anybody can be a teacher. And so now I'm paving the top of the base. And then I just mixed some white paint with wood glue again, and I just coated everything with it just to make the styrofoam pieces much more firm, but also to prime them white, because it's gonna take the gray color much better. And then it was time for earth. Many years ago I collected a couple of different colors of dirt, actual dirt, and this was the perfect opportunity to use them. So I again just used wood glue. I painted the ground layer with the glue, and I would sprinkle, you know, real earth on top of it. It's sifted. The earth has to be sifted because you want only the small particles of the earth. You don't want all the tiny rocks and pieces of branches and stuff like that, so you gotta sift it. And you can also see I mixed the brownish tone with the blackish tone, just to have much more diversity in the color. Although in the end it's not gonna be seen at all because I'm just gonna put grass over it, so it didn't make a lot of difference. But you know, you're trying to make every step as best as you can. People often, I've seen people use isopropyl alcohol. I didn't have any, so I just used water and sprinkled water on top of it just to soak it, you know, so everything will be a little bit wet, and then it will take the wood glue much better. And when it dries, it's gonna be fixed very well. The glue will soak the earth layer, and also it will penetrate through to the plaster beneath it. So it will bond everything together, and it will make it much more durable. Not that it needs to be super durable, it's only a diorama after all, but still, you don't want to lift the diorama from the table only to watch bits and pieces fall away from it, right? And whenever I was doing something messy, like spraying wood glue all over the place, I would protect my nice wooden frame with tape. So I had to, you know, just glue the tape all the time and take it off, but you know, it's part of the job. Then it was time to paint the rocks. I just used a couple of different colored washes, just like an orange one, yellow one, and I don't know, something grayish. And the idea is to put some color into the rocks, and then you wash them with the black wash. And then basically it starts looking very rock-like and black, but still you will see a little bit of color underneath all of it. Alright, then I painted the stairs. I tried painting them with the sponge, which didn't work at all, so I used the brush, and I just painted everything, you know, in a gray tone, and then created some diversity with a darker shade of gray. Just, you know, picked individual steps that will be a little bit darker. You just want to make them look random, because not every piece of the stone will be the same in nature, right? I also used some yellow paint for some rocks, brown, and in the end I just washed everything with a nice generous coat of black. I mostly use acrylic paints for everything, but for the wash I actually use ink, because somehow it tends to be much more black than the acrylic paint can be. So it's basically just normal ink diluted with water. That's it. And now it was time to get a little bit creative. I was just thinking like, where would the tiny people walk? You know, they need some kind of a path. So I had a couple of jars with lighter earth tones and I just created a little path for the people. So the same thing on the right side as well. You can see this is this ditch and I'm gonna put a bridge over it. And now it was time for grass. This is a store-bought grass. It's some kind of a product you buy in scale model stores. The same process as always. I put some wood glue first and then I sprinkle tiny grass on top of it. I have a couple of different shades of grass. So first I would always sprinkle this lighter shade of grass and then on top of it I would sprinkle some more darker shades. And actually I wasn't really happy with the look. It just looked very fake. Then I had the idea. I just took some real grass from my yard, some moss, grass and stuff like that, and I blended it and dried it in the sun for a couple of days. And I got this, you know, very nice blended grass, which is real actually. And it has a yellow tint to it. And then I applied it on top of this store-bought grass. And to me, it looked much more realistic. You can see on the left side is the store-bought one and on the right side is my secret blend. I just think it looks better. You can see the comparison here. I was extremely happy at this point because I figured I beat the system. I found my own blend of grass and it's completely free. I can just use grass from my yard. It's amazing and I will never have to buy expensive store-bought grass again. Until I soaked it with wood glue. Because I basically rehydrated the dry grass. And it started smelling in a weird organic way. It smelled like fish or something for the whole day. And I was like, oh my god, my whole diorama is gonna stink forever now. But it wasn't that bad because once it dried again, it stopped smelling. So yeah, I am not sure what to think about it. If you're gonna try something like this, you will have to decide for yourself. But the bottom line is, it looks good. As a finishing touch, the rock surfaces got a little bit of dry brushing with white paint, just to highlight the extruded points. And then it was time to populate the diorama with other interesting elements, like the bridge. Naturally, I looked at the pictures of real bridges first, and once I decided which look I actually liked, I designed it in Illustrator. As always, I used my FLUX Beambox Pro laser cutter to cut out the bridge from the thin sheet of MDF. It was a nice clean cut as always, and I just cleaned it from the excess material. Then I cut a lot of the boards, individual tiny boards, that I'm gonna use for the base of the bridge. I glued these two wooden load-bearing pieces onto my table to make everything much more stable while I'm doing the glue up. And then I just had to glue boards one by one. I would just put a couple of them in place and put a few drops of glue on top of it. This way they weren't perfectly aligned, some were skewed a little bit and it just looked handmade to me, which I liked. I of course primed everything in white again, and it was time for painting. I'm gonna paint the bridge in red color. I have some red elements on the dojo, so I figured it's gonna look like the same person built the bridge as well. And I didn't really have much luck with the glue up. I glued my fingers to the bridge so many times and actually broke the bridge in half. So here I'm actually painting over the point where I broke it. And on the left side you can see pieces of my skin glued to the bridge, and I'm gonna paint over that as well. This is a wonderful example why miniature building is so fun. I mean, can you break things in 3D accidentally? No, you can't, man. You can't glue your finger to a mouse. So now I'm just preparing the exact position where the bridge will go. I mixed a little bit of plaster again and tinted it into a gray color, just so it would blend much better. And I just glued the bridge in place. The bridge also got a nice coat of black wash, and this part is probably the most fun. You're putting this dirt on top and dried up leaves. I used a couple of different shades of leaves. I have some orange ones and then some darker ones. And the more textures you put, it just starts looking so much better. I again sprayed it with water and put some wood glue on top of it just to fix everything together. So I found out there are these lamps in Japan. They're pretty big and they are carved actually from rock. They are called Toro lamps, and I 3D printed them and glued them together. And I wanted to hide these 3D printed lines, so I basically used wood filler and I diluted it with water a little bit to make like a milky paste, and I brushed it on the lamps, and when it dried, it filled all the 3D printed lines, which made them look much more rocky, I guess. Then it was time to paint. Of course, I primed them with gray, then dabbed a little bit of white with a sponge, and then put some mossy green. I mean, they're just standing outside in the woods all the time, so they are covered in moss often. So this is what this green is for. Again, the black wash, and a little bit of dry brushing with white on top. And there it is, a finished Toro lamp. I made 6 of them, and 4 of them I placed on the main stairs. I just glued them in place with wood glue, and the other 2 I just placed somewhere on the grass. Another very important part of the Japanese diorama, in my opinion at least, is a Shinto Torii gate. It's a wooden gate, and here's what Wikipedia has to say about it. A torii is a traditional Japanese gate, most commonly found at the entrance or within a Shinto shrine, where it symbolically marks the transition from the mundane to the sacred. So basically, in a way, it's gonna make my diorama a little bit sacred, I guess. As you can see, I just made it from MDF. I created a tiny roof from cardboard, but I wanted a roof tile texture again on the roof. And I figured like the easiest way for me would be to just glue this thin sheet of polystyrene on top, and then I could just use the X-Acto knife and just cut each individual tile, right? Very quick and simple. It's always good to use a pencil to widen the cuts because X-Acto knife is very sharp, so with the pencil they look much more pronounced. Oh man, this was a pain in the butt. This is called a shimenawa, and it's some kind of a rope that's used in Shinto religion for the purification ritual, right? And of course I had to make it, but it was hard to tie these tiny knots and to glue it into place. Again, I glued my fingers 11 times in the process. Primed it in white, painted it red, painted the roof green, painted the posts black, washed it with black wash, and dry brushed it with white. And then it was finished. And no, it wasn't actually, because I wanted to create a tiny sign, and I just painted it black and painted highlights with gold color and glued it in place. And now the Torii gate was completed. And the last element were the trees. I decided to make the trees from actual branches from a garden. The problem is, a small piece of branch like this doesn't have many limbs, and trees have a lot of branches in their canopies, right? So I had to find something to glue all over the branch. In a desperate search for something I could use, I stumbled upon the curry plant, or immortelle, and my wife was drying it on the balcony, and I secretly took some. Since I used a small twig from the garden as a tree, I had to create something that looked like roots. So I just used a little bit of clay and I modeled some kind of a base. Then I could start gluing this immortelle or curry plant with hot glue on the branches. It definitely started looking like a tree. I also found some moss in the garden and glued that on top as well. You know, I was just gluing anything at this point. And then, of course, I had to paint the branches into a very dark brown, almost black color. And, you know, it's not bad. It looks like a tree, I guess. Yeah. But how do we make the leaves? Well, if you're cheap like me, you will just buy a green dishwashing sponge and also yellow dishwashing sponge and just blend them together in a blender. And then the basic gist of it is you spray the tree with the spray glue and then you apply the blended sponge. If the color of the flocking is not the best, mine definitely wasn't, I just made it from a dishwashing sponge, you can just spray paint it again. I just airbrushed some dark greenish color from beneath the branches, and on top I glued some more store-bought flocking this time, but it was a lighter green, so that way the tree also got some volume. It's bright on top and dark underneath, just like in real life. I also tried to do a small cherry tree. I used a fake snow that I bought in the store, and it kind of worked. It's not looking the best, but it's okay. I also blended the red dishwashing sponge and sprinkled the tree. Cherry trees tend to be pinkish, and I again applied even more pink paint on top of it. So basically you can say that I created these trees with Blender. There's a little bit of a CGI humor for you guys. Alright, and now finally we have all the elements and we can finally glue everything to the diorama. The cherry tree has the honor to be glued first. I wanted the trees to be very securely glued to the diorama, so I used a hot glue gun, and when it's set, I would also use even more plaster to, just fix all the roots around it. Once it dried, I would apply some more wood glue and hide the plaster with more grass around the roots. And I could also paint the bark, dry brush it with white again. Oh, and just with a little bit of yellow paint, you can add these lichens that grow on trees, and it gives it even more life. Shinto Torii gates are glued over the pathway. Of course, under the cherry tree, we also need to put some more pink petals. Some leaves on the stairs. I found a cool technique for ivy. Just a piece of string, you spray it with the spray glue and sprinkle some grass on top of it. And then it looks like ivy. Ivy often climbs the stone walls, so it was, also a nice detail. I created some bushes as well, tiny bushes, and I scattered them just randomly around the diorama. I glued each one with the hot glue gun. And then in the end I just applied a little bit more flocking here and there, some darker flocking, some lighter on top, and also my own secret blend of stinky grass. And when I was happy with the placement, I fixed it all very well with more diluted wood glue. And once it dried, it was all very firm and glued together, and nothing can fall off the diorama anymore. And you know what? Even I can't believe it, but I think we are finally done. I don't think I've talked this much in my entire life. I'm gonna go rest a little bit, perhaps open a cold one, and I'll leave you guys with the final beauty shots of the finished diorama. I'll see you next time in the next installment of this epic series. And I have to tell you to comment and like the video and dislike the video and subscribe and hit the bell button and also click the bell button because if I don't tell you that, then how will you know to subscribe? You can't possibly know that just by yourself. YouTubers need to tell people every time that they need to subscribe. Because how do people know how to subscribe? They don't. By the way, it's the red button beneath the video. It says subscribe. That's SUBRST. No, there's no T. BCBI. Yeah, that's it. I think I got it. Yeah. Subscribe.